Virtualenv. Hello everybody, Ben Finkel here, and in this nugget I'm going to cover a simple tool available for working in Python called Virtualenv. It's going to let you create virtualized, isolated Python programming environments. If you're doing any Python development outside of really just a basic tutorial learning environment, you're going to run into collisions or conflicts with your package management, your library management. And the problem that you run into there is that you're going to have a ton of different libraries installed, packages installed that support the programs and the software that you're writing. And occasionally, or maybe even more than occasionally, those packages are going to conflict. Two packages will try to overwrite the same directory, or you'll have one piece of software that needs version 5 of a particular package, and you're working on a different program that needs version 6, and they can't interact with each other. They need to be separate and distinct from one another. So the question arises, how do you manage your packages and your installs to keep these things clean and isolated from one another? And the answer is a piece of software called Virtualenv, which stands for Virtual Environment. What Virtual Environment does, or Virtualenv, is it takes your computer, which already has Python installed, as well as a whole bunch of little Python libraries, and it creates a separate space on your computer that is distinct and separate from the rest of your computer. It doesn't include anything that you don't want it to include. So it'll have a little virtual link to the Python executable software, but none of these libraries will get in there. They are cut off from this virtual environment. So inside of this virtual environment, you can actually install and create your own bunch of libraries that get run and accessed by Python programs inside of the virtual environment, while Python programs outside of the virtual environment use the Python that's installed in your system by default. It's a little bit easier to see in action, so we're going to go ahead right now and start to download and use this stuff. To begin with, I need to install Virtualenv. That's very easy to do. I'm just going to sudo pip install Virtualenv. And if you don't have pip installed on your system, take a look at the nugget on using PyPI and pip. It's very easy to do. When I run this command, it's going to download and install the Virtualenv right on my system. Very easy to do. And I can test that it worked correctly by simply typing Virtualenv, and I see that I get the quick help commands for Virtualenv. The next thing that I want to do is make a directory in which my virtual environments will be installed or run. So I'm just going to go ahead right in my home folder here, make dir virtual_env. And that's going to create a simple little directory that I can install my virtual environments to. So making a virtual environment is as easy as calling virtualenv virtual_env / let's call it virt1. This is going to create a virtual environment inside of virt1, and you can see it installs pip by default, new Python executable inside of that folder, and if I go ahead and ls that folder, I can see that it's got a bin included in a lib folder for me. Now, I've created a virtual environment called virt1, and it's inside of this folder virtual_env, but I'm not working inside of that environment yet. I'm still in the global domain, or the context of my entire computer itself, not inside of the virtual environment. In order to activate or move into the virtual environment, I need to call the following command. Virtualenv virt1 bin activate. What this is going to do is this is going to essentially move me into or inside that virtual environment that I just created, virt1. Go ahead and run that, and you can tell that I'm in there now because of the prefix on my command prompt. virt1 tells me that the things that I'm doing now are inside of the virtual environment. So I can do something like pip list, and you can see that it listed out pip setup tools and something called wsgiref. There's almost nothing installed here in this virtual environment. This is not true if I call deactivate to bounce back to my global domain context, and I call a pip list here. You can see I've got a lot more libraries installed in my computer itself, in my basic default installation of Python, than I ever did inside of that virtual environment. So the virtual environment has created a nice, clean, isolated environment where I can now install the libraries that I want and just the libraries that I want. Let's say I went ahead and said pip install pylons, and let's get version 0.8.1, I believe is a good version. So that's going to go ahead and download and install pylons 0.8.1 into my virtual environment 1 environment. Call pip list again, and I see it included along with all of its requirements, pylon 0.8.1. If I deactivate and then go ahead and create a new virtual environment, we'll call this one Vert2. We'll see it creates a new virtual environment for me. I can sign into it using the same command but pointing to the Vert2 bin folder instead. I'm now inside of Vert2, and if I do a pip list inside of here, you can see that I'm back to the basic clean environment. I don't have access to all those different libraries. And maybe here I'm going to go ahead and install pylons, but I'm just going to take the latest, greatest version, whatever that happens to install. You can see it's going to go ahead and download 1.01. And it's complete. I'll run pip list, and we can see pylons 1.01 is installed here. Of course, if I browse back to my virtual 1 environment, run a pip list, I can see that it's still pylons 0.8.1. So I have two completely separate, distinct virtual environments. Cleaning up and removing virtual environments is also a very easy thing to do. First of all, you want to make sure you're not inside of your virtual environments. Go ahead and call deactivate, drop myself back to the main command prompt. And if I want to delete a virtual environment, let's say I want to get rid of Vert1, all you have to do is remove the folder recursively, get rid of everything in it. So an rm-rf is going to delete the Vert1 folder. Virtual environment 1 is gone. I can now recreate a virtual environment there. And when I source into it and run my pip list, you can see that once again all those libraries, the pylons that I installed, are gone. I've created a new clean Vert1 environment. You can also use the -- clear command when you create your virtual environment to clear out the existing virtual environment and replace it with a brand new one. If I did something like that here, I said virtual environment -vert2 -- clear. What is this going to do? It's going to create a virtual environment in Vert2, but it's going to blank out all of those libraries that I installed, pylons 1.01, right? So I can once again source in, this time to Vert2, run a pip list, and I'll see that again it's a clean new environment. I didn't have to delete it first, I just told Virtualenv to clear out what was already there. So those are the basic commands that you need to know to work with Virtualenv. There are a few other features that you can read about. You find them here in the Virtualenv documentation I've brought up on screen. That concludes this nugget on Virtualenv, the utility for creating virtual environments for working with Python programming. As we saw, Virtualenv very easily lets you create isolated programming environments so you can have different library packages or different suites of software available to the different Python projects you're working on without worry about them interfering with each other. I hope this has been informative for you. I'd like to thank you for viewing.